Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Dynasty Rewind YouTube channel or wherever else you may be watching. I'm your host, Michael Bauer, joined as always by my faithful co-host, Nate the Professor Christian. Nate, hello. Good morning.
Hello, Mike. Hello. Happy to be here. Happy to be in my house.
Yes. We are at Nate's place. If you'd like to stop by, Nate will post his address in a little bit. And also joined by the bald dome of Dynasty, Zach Duarte. Zach, how are you?
I'm great. I'm also happy to be at Nate's house.
Yes, we're all happy to be at Nate's house. So we do have a new producer behind the scenes today. So if things do not go smoothly, it's not our fault. It is his. We're going to be taking some questions, just kind of recapping the first round of the draft. Just to let you guys know, super chats always get priority. So go ahead and super chat away. But let's just kick it off. Nate, first overall, Cam Ward goes to the Tennessee Titans. A lot of speculation about that leading up to the draft. And then a few days before, it kind of seemed like that was the consensus. A lot of people thought it should be Shedeur Sanders. It was Cam Ward. I want to get your guys' opinion on the Cam Ward 101 to the Tennessee Titans. RIP Will Levis.
Yeah, so Cam Ward obviously was always going to be the first overall pick there. And, what he did this past year at Miami, it was a pretty easy pick. And we all knew it was coming. So, the first couple picks were chalk, despite, there was a trade involved with the number 2 that we can get into in just a second. But Cam Ward, we know what he's going to get himself into with the Titans. They still have to build around him. Calvin Ridley and Treylon Burks is not the strongest 1-2 punch of the wide receiver room.
Come on, man.
They did just sign Tyler Lockett, though, so that helps out a little bit.
Which I like that signing, by the way.
I do as well.
Yeah.
They still need to get somebody there that, they can rely on, but they did the right thing at the first overall pick, right, Zach?
Yeah, I think they're going to continue to build around Cam Ward today. They have I think one of the first 2 or 3 picks in the second round. I would fully expect a wide receiver there, unless maybe they trade back. But I don't know about you guys. I'm a fan of this landing spot. I still believe in Brian Callahan. You and I, Nate, talked the other day about what offenses and what systems are we looking to overproduce their expectations in 2025 or whatever year we're in for fantasy.
Yeah,
and for me, Tennessee was one of them because I believe in Brian Callahan and the system that he brings to Tennessee. And we didn't really get to see that last year with a quarterback that he didn't pick in Will Levis. So I like this landing spot for Cam, and I like whoever lands there today or tomorrow as a wide receiver, tight end, or even a halfback. So we'll see.
Yeah. And maybe, maybe not today, maybe tomorrow we could see Will Levis on the move. Possibly. Obviously, he's not in their future long-term plans for the Tennessee Titans. So maybe he goes somewhere else. Maybe he starts his NFL career as a journeyman backup this weekend. So we'll see what happens to Will Levis. Good luck and Godspeed. So at the number 2 overall pick, we had a trade going on here, and that was the Jacksonville Jaguars trading with the Cleveland Browns. And the Jaguars went ahead and they picked Travis Hunter, which is going to be, I think, a fantastic pick for them. I know, a lot of people speculating what's it going to be with him playing defense. Obviously, he's not going to play both sides the entire game. You just can't do that at the NFL level. But the fact of the matter is the Jacksonville Jaguars now have a fantastic and very young wide receiving core with Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter coming into the mix. Brenton Strange, now would be a good time to go by him as well as the tight end, unless he gets replaced. So maybe hold off just a little bit on that. Get some feeler offers out there, though. Forgive me. So Travis Hunter, 2nd overall. Zach, we're going to start with you. What do you think about this landing spot? Do you like him going 2nd overall?
Yeah, how can you not, right? Again, a conversation that Nate and I had dating back to our mailbag videos, like, where do you feel comfortable drafting Travis Hunter in your drafts? And you were like, 104, 105. And I was like, that's too high for me. Him coming into a system that's led by Liam Cohen, which we saw what he could do last year with guys, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Then those guys were injured. Then we saw other guys be fantasy relevant. Jalen McMillan, Cade Otton. You even saw like Sterling Shepard be a fantasy wide receiver 3 or flex. This is a great landing spot for me, for everybody involved in Jacksonville. And I saw these reactions on Twitter. We always do this as a community, and I don't think we need to. Like, BTJ, arrow pointing down. I don't think so, man. To me, this just opens up that offense so much for everyone involved. Like, arrows pointed all the way up for everyone involved. I love that landing spot for Travis Hunter for fantasy purposes. I think it'll work out NFL-wise, but I don't know how effective it'll make the team, but that's not what we're here to judge. We're here to judge how it affects your fantasy teams. And for him to land in an opportunity in a good system with a coach I trust and a good quarterback, I love this landing spot, honestly.
Yeah, and I don't like the whole consensus thought of this is arrows down for Brian Thomas Jr. I mean,
Right.
steel sharpen steel, hungry boats drink more water. Nate, it's I believe the term that we use the dynasty on.
Yeah.
So this, if you take coverage away from Brian Thomas Jr. because you have to cover Travis Hunter and vice versa, I just think it's better for everybody involved. Nate, your thoughts on Travis Hunter to the Jaguars?
Yeah, I was, in my head, I had already come to terms with him going to the Browns and trying to figure out who's going to be throwing the ball. Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett, possibly.
That he is.
But I certainly like Trevor Lawrence throwing him the ball than anyone that the Browns are going to be throwing around in that backup, in that pocket, So I love this spot. I think some people are already kind of worried about who is the wide receiver one there. I don't know if there's going to be a bona fide wide receiver one. This might be, not to actually comp these guys, but like might be a bit of like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, where you got like a 1A, a 1B, both are really, really good. I think Travis Hunter is going to see, 100 plus targets his first year, even with, possibly limited snaps, but they're saying he's going to be a wide receiver first who also plays on defense. Then that team needs offensive playmakers. This is a guy that can really do that. He's great at the catch point. He's great after the catch. He's someone that they can really rely on. He can play. Maybe he's the Mike Evans role with the Liam Cohen offense, and Brian Thomas is the Chris Godwin. Maybe it's the other way around. I think they're kind of interchangeable. They both, are really good at the catch point, good after the catch as well. So, already maybe a top 12 duo in the wide receiver room in the NFL. I mean, this is an impressive wide receiver room.
Yeah, well, you look at top duos. We got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. You got AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and then these guys. And what other receiving duos? Maybe Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, but we haven't seen that happen yet.
You could have said Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, although last year kind of squashed that.
Yeah,
you got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison.
Yep.
Guys like that.
You got JSN Cup now in Seattle.
Yeah, which for the record, I did not like the Cup contract, 3 years, $45 million at his age and just with his injury history. But hey, you know what? It could turn around for him. We don't know. So I love the landing spot, Travis Hunter. And we did have a comment that the Jaguars saved Travis Hunter from the Browns, and probably I can't agree more. We do have a super chat from Michael. Great name, by the way. Dart to the New York Giants over Sanders. Thoughts? Well, we're skipping ahead a little bit, but that's okay.
We'll get there.
I think, and I had been pretty vocal about saying in the past that whatever we think about players does not matter until the NFL draft happens. The NFL showed us last night what they think about Shedeur Sanders. They do not think that he is a first-round talent, and he isn't because he wasn't. So what do we think about this? Daniel Jones was their last first-round pick, and they showed some first-round picks of quarterbacks last night by the New York Giants. Hasn't been great for them. This is a guy who played primarily in a shotgun-style offense. I do think that the Giants should have cleaned house this offseason, firing their GM and their head coach. So hopefully Dart doesn't get screwed up for the next regime that's going to come in. I don't see Brian Daboll being a long-term coach there. And as an Eagles fan, I love seeing the Giants in a state of flux. As our producer, who's a Commanders fan, loves seeing the Giants be bad. But Nate, we'll start with you. What do you think about Dart to the Giants over Sanders?
Yeah, honestly, I don't love it. I still have Sanders over Dart myself. I understand the NFL, they're going to do what they want, whatever they think is best. I think a lot of the worries about Shedeur Sanders don't necessarily come from his play on the field, though there's certainly question marks there with him holding onto the ball too long. There's some things on the field, but a lot of it comes with the off the field media attention. I think some teams don't want that. Maybe the Steelers, would have picked up Shedeur Sanders if his last name wasn't Sanders. But we pivot, and he's now going to be a second-round pick, it looks like. So whether it's going to be the Browns, the Saints, maybe even like the Jets at 40 or 42, we'll see what happens. But I would have preferred Sanders myself, but Dart going there, he gets to sit for a year, which is ideal for Jackson Dart. This entire time in the pre-draft process, we talked about wherever Dart goes, he needs to sit for a year. He now gets to do that behind Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston or Tommy DeVito, whoever's starting for the Giants.
Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets.
One of the questions is, can he throw over the middle of the field? Can he read the whole field? Is he more like a one half of the field kind of guy? He's going to have time to figure that out. And even if he is just a one half of the field kind of guy, I mean, he can throw it to Malik Neighbors. So, there's worse situations for the quarterback to be in. I don't personally have the gut feeling that Jackson Dart is the guy to turn around the New York Giants. I feel like they need a true, quarterback that they can, be that change to the franchise. I don't think Jackson Dart necessarily is that. Can he develop into that? We're going to see.
We also see that first round quarterback or not, if they're not productive in a few years, teams are not afraid to move on by any means. Zach, your thoughts on Jackson Dart? And you know what? Most importantly, where are you going to draft that Jackson Dart in a super flex league?
Yeah, well, I feel differently than Nate on this. It's a situation where I do hope, like Nate said, that he sits for the majority of the season. Even if there's a situation where it's like Michael Penix, where he comes into the end of the season, he needs to sit because, as Nate said, he played in a system where he didn't play under center, and you've got to learn how to run an offense playing quarterback under center in the NFL.
You do.
And so I would really hope, just for his sake, that he would sit and learn for an entire year. I would hope that, logically speaking, and I'll get to the fantasy impact here in just a second, that organization is together as one plan, because you hope it's not a situation where the GM and the coach are trying to save their job by having a lifeline in a quarterback next offseason. I don't hate this whatsoever. I don't love it, but I don't hate it by any means necessary. There's a lot of Ole Miss ties in that building. Like their former coach, I think Joe Judge, works on the Ole Miss staff. Eli Manning, a former Ole Miss quarterback. Like, there's so many Ole Miss ties in that building that it just made sense. But also, like, you know, with Shedeur Sanders comes the whole, oh, maybe Dion will take over as the coach next year. So that's part of the Shedeur package.
That's a good point.
Unfortunately, for fantasy purposes, I would feel comfortable drafting him like 112, early second, if I can afford to just eat that downtime, because I would not expect any production from him this season, and who knows about year two. I mean, I would expect that he's probably the quarterback in a year. But I don't necessarily hate this as much as Nate maybe does, or maybe he just likes Shedeur more as a prospect. So I've learned my lesson in coming on here and saying like, this guy's not a good fit here. We have no idea, you know. And look, here's the thing: the Giants have done really well drafting. Like, at least when you look back at their last one or two drafts with Joe Shane, they've done a really good job drafting. The biggest thing that they've done is commit to Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley. And as much as that worked out for the Eagles, that may have not worked out for the Giants, because they didn't have the Eagles' offensive line. So, you know, outside of that, you look at their draft picks, like, they've done really well in the draft. Look at last year: Tyron Tracy, Malik Neighbors, Theo Johnson. They hit on a cornerback in the second round that started for them. So they've done really well in the draft. So I'm just somebody that's going to sit back and kind of trust what they've done and hope that fundamentally and organizationally they're cohesive in their plan. Otherwise, you have a situation where coach is fired, GM's fired, and you have a quarterback that the new regime didn't pick. So I hope that answers your questions there.
Yeah, and assuming we get to that point, you know, and not saying that, you know, we know for sure that that coaching staff's going to be out after this year, but obviously they're on the hot seat starting off the year. Mm-hmm. If they end up losing their jobs, like Zach said, we have a new regime coming in for this team that did not draft Jackson Dart. It was a late first, which I do think is a different kind of investment than an early first.
Right.
And if that happens where they lose their jobs, Giants are probably picking top 5 again. Now, I'm not sure he's going to be in next year's quarterback class, but if there's a quarterback sitting there that looks like a true franchise-changing quarterback, are they going to say, hey, we have Jackson Dart that the last regime drafted. We're not going to go after, you know, Lenore Sellers, or, you know, say Arch Manning comes out, you know, and they have an opportunity to draft him. They're going to pick him over Jackson Dart, I would think. So not saying that that's going to happen, but it's a possibility. I don't think that this is like the kind of investment where, you know, with how this team is set up, we know for sure that Jackson Dart's the guy for the next 4 or 5 years.
A lot of times too, when you have change like this, you know, you'll have a team owner, team general manager tell a coach, you're coming in to coach Jackson Dart or whoever it may be in that building.
Yeah.
All right. So that's that. We could touch on Jackson Dart a little bit more when we get to him if we have any more thoughts. But let's go to pick 6 in the draft. Ashton Genty, first running back off the board to the Las Vegas Raiders. Still, to me, feels weird saying Las Vegas Raiders. It should be Oakland. What are you guys doing out there? But so Genty, first running back off the board. We kind of all expected that. I think I don't think anybody here disagrees with Genty was going to be the first running back off the board by any means. So obviously should be the running back starter from day one. Zamir White, Alexander Madison don't really pose a threat to a dynamic, powerful, and also great receiving back like Ashton Genty. Zach, we're going to start off with you. Your thoughts on Genty to the Raiders at 6 overall?
I mean, it doesn't change anything for fantasy purposes or your rookie drafts. This is the 101, hands down, no doubt. Nothing changes. Personally, on the NFL side, I wish they would have gone wide receiver, because they're missing that wide receiver that can stretch the field. And there are some guys that can still do that. But, you know, as Nate and I have discussed, like, Nate's not a big fan of this wide receiver class. And I think if you didn't get Tet to do that, you're not getting the best guy that can stretch the field for you. They obviously have Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, but they don't have the guy that can throw the ball down the field. And guess what? Geno Smith does really well. He throws the ball down the field. So if they don't have that wide receiver, maybe they go out today and get like a Jaden Higgins. I don't know. I would have loved to have seen them take Tet there and then get one of these running backs in the second or third round, Travion Henderson, Quinton Judkins, Caleb Johnson, whatever it may be. But look, I mean, that's probably a top 5 talent in this draft, Ashton Genty at number 6. So it's, I'm just speaking in terms of like how I would have liked to have seen them approach this from a football perspective, but fantasy wise, I mean, I don't see why this isn't a great fit. Pete Carroll loves to run the football.
He does.
And there's nobody else there that really takes away opportunity. As a matter of fact, it's a great running back room for depth. Like they have Raheem Mostert there. Sincere McCormack was actually pretty good at the end of the last year. Zamir White is still there. But there's nobody there that takes away opportunity from Ashton Genty. There's no B in that backfield right now. There's 2, 3, and 4. And so, I mean, all gung-ho on Ashton Genty at the 101, and there's no reason why he shouldn't be a top 5, top 8 running back next year in fantasy.
Yeah, I think the volume's going to come pretty quickly. I just pulled up, Marshawn Lynch's stats when he was with the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll was there, because we've been talking about, this is like, the Marshawn Lloyd for Pete Carroll for the Raiders. In his 4 years that the Seattle Seahawks were really doing well there with Marshawn Lynch in the 2011 to 2014. 285 carries, 315 carries, 301 carries, 280 carries.
Wow.
And that's averaging about 15 games a season, 16 games. So I think Genty is in line easily for 300 carries, easily 300 plus touches. So the volume is going to be there. We think the efficiency is going to be there. I think he's a great receiving back too. So I think he's going to get a good amount of touches there too. It looks like Marshawn Lynch was getting about 40 catches, 30 to 40 catches a season. 35 about. So, I think Genty can do more than that. So I think the ceiling is really high for Genty in this offense.
And I'll say with what the Raiders have done this offseason, bringing in Geno Smith, hiring Pete Carroll, drafting Ashton Genty, this is a team that's tired of losing, tired of being the whipping post of, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Broncos are coming up there too. Mm-hmm. So this is a team, obviously the Chargers out there as well. This is a team that they want to compete and they want to do it right away. So I'm also expecting the Raiders to make some moves in the second, third round tonight, a wide receiver of sorts. Obviously, they're going to shore up lines, defense, stuff like that. But I love the move. Zach, I will say I don't necessarily agree 100% with the fact that Ashton Genty is the bona fide 101. I'm still taking Ashton Genty with 101. But with Cam Ward going first overall, I can see in some drafts people taking Cam Ward with the 101. So I agree with you in the sense that I'm drafting him 101 if I have that pick, which I do not anywhere. I wish I had at least 101 this year, but I don't.
Get in more leagues, dude.
No, I'm not going to do that. But I'll tell you what, if you want to join some more leagues and hopefully join some with some of us, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. We have a great 2025 draft chat going on right now. You could do a week for free. So again, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in the Discord. It is popping off right now during the draft. So Nate, let's move on. And we have Ted McMillan going 8th overall to the Carolina Panthers. And look, the Carolina Panthers have been investing in offense the last few years. We had Xavier Legette last year. We have JT Sanders going in the 4th round last year. And now Ted McMillan, this is a guy who I think I like him better than Xavier Legette. He could be their wide receiver 1, maybe not right away, maybe in a year or two. But Nate, your thoughts on Ted McMillan, 8th overall to the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah, I'm not golden over Ted. So I'm just going to say that right away. I'm still Tet over Golden. I think, and we'll get to Golden a bit more, but I don't think that Golden has the profile to be a true wide receiver 1 at the NFL level. I think he's going to be a really, really good wide receiver 2 kind of player. If he's a wide receiver 1 in the Packers offense, because they have no one else to really be that alpha, then he can be pretty good. But I think Ted McMillan's set up to be a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. It doesn't matter who else is in that wide receiver room. He's got the size, he's got the athleticism, he's really, really good at the catch point. I think he's going to gel really well with Bryce Young and be that jump ball specialist, but also someone that Bryce Young can rely upon, who he hasn't really had while he's been at the Panthers over the past 2 years. Adam Thielen was that guy, but McMillan is much more athletic, much better at the catch point,
much younger,
and much younger at this point. So I think McMillan, this is a pick that we never really saw in mock drafts. It was always the Panthers going edge, defense, And I was always trying to figure out why, because I think McMillan is the perfect guy for the Panthers offense to build around and give Bryce Young help, who showed a lot of flashes at the end of last season. Actually looked like one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL for that second half. And he wasn't working with a great offense. I mean, the best player in that offense last year outside of Young was Chuba Hubbard, who, I appreciate, but, is not a Pro Bowl player. So Ted McMillan coming in there, I think he's someone that can step in, be that wide receiver one. He should see 120 plus targets his rookie year. I think he can finish as a top 24 wide receiver this year in fantasy. And if they continue to build that offense and Bryce Young continues to, get better and better, I think McMillan has top 12 potential in this offense. I love this. I love the volume he's going to get. I think he's going to be efficient with the volume as well because of his size and speed. I don't know if he's my wide receiver one because I do like Travis Hunter a lot, but the volume is really going to be there for McMillan. So it's going to be, I'm going to have to really kind of think about it a little bit, but I'm happy picking McMillan in the top three. I don't top four in Superflex, maybe top five, depending on how these, where TreVeyon Henderson goes. If TreVeyon Henderson goes to the Broncos, he's probably like a top three pick for me. But I do really like McMillan. Outside of where I decided to put Travis Hunter, McMillan is my wide receiver one in this draft.
Okay, great. Zach, do you have anything to add to Ted McMillan?
I mean, just kind of echo what Nate said. We should have seen this coming. And even I'm somebody, I eat up mock drafts all day long. Like I'm driving and I just listen to a mock draft. Didn't see a lot of Tet mocked to the Panthers, and it made sense because they had a historically bad defense last year, especially on run defense. That's why you had a lot of like Jalen Walker mocked there. And we should have seen this one coming. I love the landing spot. I told you I had a rookie draft start last night, and Tet went 102. And I think you're going to see a little bit more of that. I think Tet now enters that 102 conversation because this is a good landing spot with opportunity. I think people liked what they saw out of Bryce Young last year. And then again, the most important thing for me is what system are they in? Well, they're in a Dave Canales system that we've seen wide receivers flourish for fantasy purposes. So great landing spot. Love the pick. Love it for Bryce Young. And I think the Panthers are doing really great in their rebuild. They're kind of just ho-hum, taking things as they come. They realized they made a very bad decision a couple years ago in at least trading what they traded for Bryce Young, but they're doing their best to kind of pick up the pieces and rebuild that organization one step at a time.
Yeah. All right. We'll see what happens there in Carolina. Let's move to pick 10. Kind of the surprise of the draft. I think.
Yeah, one of them.
Coulson Lovelin going to the Chicago Bears. So RIP Cole Kmet, I guess. Yeah. Not really sure. Cole Kmet is now a glorified blocking tight end. I don't know. And Zach, you had said that they extended Cole Kmet, right?
I think last year was the first year of his extension.
Yeah.
The payout. It was obviously agreed to 2 years ago, but last year was the first year that the extension hit.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Bears do there. Obviously, they do have some firepower. They got Roma Dunze. Keenan Allen is gone. However, still have DJ Moore. Now you have Colston Lovelin. You have Cole Kmet. No running back selected. That was speculation. Ashton Genty possibly going to the Bears. Obviously not possible. Picked 4 picks before they picked. I still do think the Bears could draft a running back tonight.
They have 2 picks in round 2 today.
They do. So,
3 picks,
it's going to be interesting to see. Or, hey, DeAndre Swift, you're safe for one more day. But Nate, your thoughts on Colston Lovelin? He was your tight end 1, correct?
I kind of had him my tight end 1 with Tyler Warren. I felt that depending on what scheme you wanted to run, how you wanted to use your tight end, you could go either one as tight end 1. I think Colston Lovelin's more of you put him into your offense, he's going to do everything you need to do, be a really good route runner, catch the ball really well. Tyler Warren, maybe a bit more versatile, someone you can build an offense around specifically, but also, in that upside, you have to kind of manufacture touches and build your offense around him. Colston Lovelin, plug and play. I think he's going to be really good in this trio with DJ Moore and Roma Dunze. He's going to be able to really eat up the middle of the field while those guys are taking the, Roma Dunze is going to be going deep, DJ Moore underneath. Colston Lovelin's going to be eating up the middle of the field. They're doing everything they can to set up Caleb Williams for success. Ben Johnson is there. We saw how much he used the tight end and Sam Laporta at Detroit Lions. I think Colston Lovelin, while a bit of a different player than Sam Laporta, is going to have a lot of success there. I could see Lovelin being a better tight end rookie season than Tyler Warren, and we'll get to Tyler Warren in his landing spot in a little bit, but I really do love this landing spot for Colston Lovelin. I think it's got good upside long term. I think, while he's not going to necessarily be a top 2 target in this offense with DJ Moore and Roma Dunze there, it's going to be a very close third. And I think with the Ben Johnson offense, there's a lot of upside for touchdowns as well. We need to, actually see it on the field because we were really excited about Caleb Williams and that offense last year. And, we didn't really get the fireworks that we were hoping for. So still have to see it. But once again, on paper, the Bears are winning the offseason, kind of feels like. Can they actually, make it happen on the field? I think Coulson Lovelin's a great pick here.
Yeah, and Coulson Lovelin, a very physical player, very good in traffic, good contested catch. So I like this. Brings a lot of physicality to the Chicago Bears, which is what Bears fans, they want physicality. This is Monsters of the Midway back in the 80s. So they want something like this. Zach, your thoughts on Coulson Lovelin to the Bears?
Raise those off-season championship banners, Chicago Bears fans. It's 3 years in a row. Yeah, I feel bad for Cole Kmet in fantasy purposes, not in real life. He's getting paid handsomely. Like, do they move him? Do they trade him? He just got Michael Maynard, man. Like, what's going on with our fantasy tight ends?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see a way that they run like 2 tight ends that is flourishing for fantasy purposes. Does Cole Kmet take away from Coulson Lovelin's fantasy production at all? Like,
I think he's good enough where he can.
Right.
I mean, Cole Kmet is no slouch by any means.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate for Cole Kmet. But great landing spot. Like I think in your rookie drafts, this probably propels Coulson Loveling to like the 105, 106 ahead of Tyler Warren. Because if I'm picking tight ends right now, I want the Chicago Bears tight end over the Indianapolis Colts tight end.
Yeah. I think this will be a pretty heavy tight end premium to put him up that high. I think still these tight ends are near the back half of the first for me. I think Lovelin, like rookie year, top 20 tight end. And then moving forward there, I think he's got top, 12 potential for sure. I don't know in this offense, I think to be like a top 3, top 5 tight end in fantasy football, you need to be a top 2 target on the offense. I'm not sure that's going to happen for Lovelin with the Bears. So, Lovelin, Warren, for me, still sitting probably around that like 108 at the earliest, maybe 110, depending on your tight end premium.
All right. I believe we have a super chat coming in from Michael. Would you draft Tet at the 106 if Henderson and Judkins are gone? I already have 101 and also have the 206, 207, and 301. Need running backs in a Superflex dynasty. Start 10. So, Nate, what about you? If Henderson and Judkins are gone at the 106, you feel comfortable drafting Tet there?
Yeah, assuming, you got Genty off the board, you got Hampton off the board, you got the 2 Ohio State guys off the board. There's no running back at this point that I would really want to reach for at the 106. So I'm absolutely ecstatic to pick up Tet McMillan there. I think he's going to be a really good value at the 106. I think, like I said, like you said earlier, like 103, 104, I think that's a good spot to start looking at Tet. So picking him up at the 106 is good value. You need running backs, but you're getting Genty with the 101. I think there is some good depth in this class too. You might be able to pick up a running back at the 2.6, 2.7.
I agree.
Maybe not a day 2 running back. We'll see how many go today. But I think there's going to be some 4th round running backs this year who are pretty decent and going to get some opportunity. So I think going best player available, which is going to probably be McMillan at that point, great pickup.
Zach, you agree?
I'm a little confused. This rookie draft is already happening and he's at 106, or like, because that means a player that wasn't drafted in the NFL draft was drafted at 105. You're talking about Judkins, maybe.
Yeah, and this is why I do not like starting drafts on when the NFL draft starts. Like, I get everyone's excited. You want to get in there, you want to start making moves, but I'd love to see guys on teams before I start. So, Michael, if you could put in there if your draft has been started or not, and we can come back to that in a little bit.
Let me just acknowledge, so Ted at 106 is a slam dunk.
Yeah,
that is a no-brainer. You run that card in as soon as possible, even though we're not actually running cards in. You click draft as soon as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that. So then we're going to go down. Let's see the next offensive player we have that's relevant to us. The Indianapolis Colts take Tyler Warren at the 114. And I'm a big Tyler Warren fan. Do not necessarily love the landing spot with Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones there. Just a lot of uncertainty at the quarterback position. You also got Michael Pittman. You got Jonathan Taylor there. Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell. I guess we got to put him in there.
Still.
But, Zach, we're going to start with you. Tyler Warren to the Colts. How you feeling about that?
I mean, this was the pick we saw mocked for just so long. It was the Colts taking a tight end, and it was very often Tyler Warren as the tight end 1, which is a bit of a shocker. He's the tight end 2, but he's still there for the Colts. If you're talking about for fantasy purposes, if you're selecting Tyler Warren, I'm not expecting like top 8 production out of Tyler Warren to start.
For sure.
Until I see these quarterbacks be consistent in the NFL, I can't expect them to be consistent for my skill position players in fantasy. I can't expect consistent production for Josh Downs, for Michael Pittman, now Tyler Warren, or Adonai Mitchell. And, you're kind of drafting the talent at that point and hoping the situation gets better. There's obviously a certain point where you just draft Tyler Warren in your rookie drafts because he's so talented. And, you know, he doesn't necessarily have to catch the ball in order for him to have score fantasy points. We saw that at Penn State. He
Yep.
ran the ball. He threw the ball. He did everything.
Snap the ball.
Right.
He did.
Yeah. He snapped
Yeah.
the ball and caught it in the
He
same
caught
play.
the touchdown on that play too. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not making that up. He was the center, snapped it, and caught a touchdown.
An update real quick. Michael said that his draft is May 3rd. So
Okay.
he's got some time.
He's kind of
so
just
great.
projecting
Perfect.
there. Yeah. You draft Ted at 1-6.
Well, that's good. You know your league mates. You know probably what they're going to do, and that's fundamental. Is knowing your league mates and what they may or may not do. I think that's really important. Good job there.
Yeah, but just, you know, if you're drafting Tyler Warren in your fantasy drafts, just I would say don't project him to be like this top tight end right off the bat, and you hope that his situation improves, whether that's a different quarterback or that's one of these two guys getting better. I will say I do like Shane Steichen. Like I trust him to figure it out. And if I would expect that if none of these guys are good enough for the Colts to make the playoffs this year, that they will look for a quarterback next year in the draft.
I agree. And, you know, I will say this, though. It appears to me like the Colts have been searching for a tight end for a long time. Tyler Warren's certainly the most dynamic tight end that they've had in Indianapolis since I don't know when. Dallas Clark, maybe. I don't know. I mean, they have Mo Alley Cox out there. They had a bunch of other guys that they tried to. Kylan Granson, who's now an Eagle. Can't wait. That's so much fun for me. But he's definitely dynamic. So maybe he gives Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones those easy open underneath throws that help a quarterback build confidence. Nate, are you feeling the same way? Are you kind of hands off on Tyler Warren now after this landing spot?
Yeah, I think Zach's right to be a little conservative with your rookie year expectations for Tyler Warren, you know, because of that offense. But it kind of does fit, like you're talking about these quarterbacks. You give them manufactured touches to the tight end. It works well for Tyler Warren. You let him do something after the catch. It works well for your quarterbacks. You give them easy plays where you can help build their confidence, get them in rhythm. So I like the overall fit here. But for fantasy football, I don't know if, you know, he's going to be a top 12 tight end in his rookie year. I think that Tyler Warren does have like George Kittle type upside long term.
Yeah, I could see that.
talk into it.
All right. Do we have anything now? Can anyone hear us? Put it in the comments if you can. We'll just have to crank.
Crank that soldier pool.
Yeah. All right. Brian says volume good, so we should be good.
Volume is good. Everyone's just going to talk very loudly into this mic. We have one mic going right now.
So I apologize about
Round table.
I apologize about the delay, everyone. I should have brought my shotgun mic down with me. We could have put it right up there above everything. So where were we? What were we talking about? Oh, so the surprise of the draft so far, Ebuka going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Zach, you had theories about Mike Evans possibly being gone after this year. They could get out of Chris Godwin's contract. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, when this pick happens, the first thing you're doing is asking yourself why, right? Obviously, you like the player, but when you look at the opportunity, there's not one there to draft a wide receiver at 19, right? This isn't drafting a wide receiver in the third. This is drafting a wide receiver in the top 20 of the NFL draft. So now you got to look at, there's two guys there. One they just brought back. They paid him pretty decently, and he took a pay cut to come back, right? So it can't be a situation where they're trying to replace Chris Godwin. So you look at Mike Evans' contract. And that contract, I think it expires at the end of 2025. Like, he's a free agent in 2026. So the weird thing is he comps to Chris Godwin. Like, he's very much a clone stylistically as Chris Godwin. So I'm not entirely sure how they're going to make this work. What this really does is kill Jalen McMillan, right? He's completely irrelevant now in your fantasy leagues until there's some kind of an injury, maybe even two. But it just, for fantasy purposes, I think he's going to drop a little bit. I think he maybe falls back to like the end of that second tier. And again, you have to know the expectations year one, what to expect. And I think the perfect situation that you came up with yesterday was JSN 2.0 or Roma Dunze 2.0.
Really is.
Yeah.
It's like Ebuka is this year's Roma Dunze, who was last year's JSN. We just have the same pattern of a really good wide receiver being picked up in the first round, who's going to be behind a veteran or two, and then we're going to really be able to reap the rewards in a year or maybe even two. But we looked at the contracts last night. Mike Evans is a free agent after this year. He will be 32 years old. Chris Godwin is on a 2-year deal, but they can get out of it after 2 years if they want to. And depending on how he comes off his injury, he'll be about 30, I think, at that point in about 2 years. So, this is definitely a move for the future. And, talking to the Buccaneers GM this morning, the reporters were talking to him about this pick. And he said it's not about Chris Godwin's injury rehab. There's no concerns there. That's not why they made this pick. They just really like this guy. They talked about him being a perfectionist. You can see that in his route running. He's a really good pro, very good with the technical stuff. So I think this is a really good pickup for them. It really fits their offense. He's only going to get 80 or so targets this year, most likely. I mean, then again, Mayfield, put up some really good stats last year. So, if they can continue to have a good offense, maybe it's even more than that. But I do think that's going to be limited production this year. You're going to get him a little bit late in your first round in your rookie draft, but I think it's going to work out long-term for you in just a year or two.
All right. So then after that, the next one that we have, Omarian Hampton, my running back 2 in the class, not yours, Nate, but Omarian Hampton goes to the Los Angeles Chargers. Rest in peace, Najee Harris. I did say recently to buy Najee Harris. I guess this nullifies that statement. Maybe there's a split back system. They did it last year with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, so maybe they do that again for a little bit. And then I think year 2, it's wheels up for Omarian Hampton for the Los Angeles Chargers. You agree with that, Nate?
Yeah, I think this is a really great landing spot for Hampton because he's a guy that can handle a lot of volume. And with the Chargers, I think we have the opportunity for a lot of volume for Hampton. Now, obviously, Najee's there, so there might be some limitations in value that we have right now going into year 1. But also, as much as I love Najee Harris, and I do think he's a very good pro and high floor, low ceiling kind of running back, when you pick a guy at 22 overall, it doesn't, I don't know if Najee's going to keep him off the field that much. Hampton's going to be the RB1 there moving forward, and he offers enough on all 3 downs that he's going to be out there a lot. I could see him getting, we talked about Genty getting over 300 touches this year. I don't know if Hampton will get quite that many. I would probably put him for like 250 touches right off the top of my head, but that's plenty enough to be a top 24 running back in fantasy this year. And with some touchdown luck, we'll see how that goes with Najee. We could even see Hampton into the top 12 in his rookie season. I think the Chargers offense is set up, where whoever gets there and gets the volume of touches, if they can stay healthy, there is a ton of fantasy football upside there, especially when you put into the fact how well Hampton catches the ball as well.
And I think, too, the thing you need to look at here, the Najee contract wasn't anything that crazy.
No, it
1
wasn't.
year, $5 million, the base salary
Yep.
of $1.5 million. I'm going to pitch this to you guys, because you guys probably saw Omarian Hampton more than I did, because I tried to scout the other guys that, I had a feeling he was going to get drafted first round, so I tried to scout some of the other guys. Is this a situation where both of them can be on the field at one time, maybe both in the backfield, one lines up out wide? I didn't watch as much Omarian Hampton as you did.
I'm going to say probably not.
Okay.
It's always possible, of course, but I don't think Omarian Hampton is that great of a route runner where you could split him out. And I think we could say the same thing about Najee Harris. Maybe they do some sort of old school 2-back set from the 90s, which with Harbaugh there, you never know what could happen. But I'd say, and we've always heard, as an Eagles fan, I've heard, we're going to put these 2 backs on the field at the same time, and it just never happens. So possible to me, unlikely.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's too likely. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a couple snaps like that, but I don't think Najee Harris is going to be standing in the way of Omarian Hampton, quite honestly, as much as I do love me some Najee.
Let's go to pick 23. Nate's new wide receiver, one of the class. Matthew Golden goes to the hosting Green Bay Packers. So the Green Bay Packers fans were quite hyped, as the kids would say. So Matthew Golden, a guy who can play all over the formation. A lot of people speculating what this could mean for other Packers wide receivers. But Nate, I don't know if you necessarily loved this pick so much. So why don't you give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So when Ebuka went off the board, we were talking and we were like, okay, well, Matthew Golden's going to be the wide receiver 3 off the board most likely, and Ebuka is probably going to see about 80, 90 targets in the Texans offense. The Buccaneers offense. Sorry. Now Golden goes to the Packers. And a lot of people want to anoint him as the wide receiver 1. But I don't know if Golden's going to get more than 100 targets himself in this offense. There's a lot of mouths to feed. Now, Christian Watson, obviously, it's not going to be much of an impact there, but you do still have Romeo Doubs. You just have Jaden Reed, who are going to get their own targets themselves. And then you throw Golden in there. And you still have Wicks, as that wide receiver 4, who's going to get a little bit himself. You still have Josh Jacobs there, who's a great pass catcher himself. There's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, and I think a lot of people want to anoint Matthew Golden as the wide receiver 1, who's all of a sudden going to have 120, 140 targets. I don't know if this offense is set up for that. Jaden Reed has been limited to a 70% snap rate, but he still is seeing, 90, 100 targets himself. Romeo Doubs is out there doing, Jordan loves talking about Doubs as one of his favorite wide receivers in the NFL and somebody he put in his dream team if he had to score a touchdown on one last play. So I love Matthew Golden. I think he's a really good deep threat, and I think he's a really good route runner who can develop into, I kind of comped him, not actually a comp, but fantasy football wise, I think his ceiling is somewhere around what Devonta Smith can do as that really, really good wide receiver 2 for an offense. Now, there's no wide receiver 1 in this Green Bay Packers offense, so Matthew Golden might elevate himself to that, but I don't think he has that ceiling that McMillan has with the Panthers, that even maybe Travis Hunter has with the Jaguars. I don't know if he's built to be that true wide receiver 1, 140 targets a year, and I don't know if the Green Bay Packers offense is set up to give him that either. So I think I'm personally having, there's not a wide receiver 1 in Green Bay. There hasn't been for a couple of years. I don't think it's going to change with this draft pick. I think there's 3 wide receivers who get a lot of the same kind of competitive targets, and you're going to see 3 guys that could all be top 36. Doesn't mean Matthew Golden's just going to all of a sudden walk in and be a top 12 wide receiver just because we all love that he ran a 4.29. And
Liam has a question here. Buy low for Reed. Liam, for me, yeah, I definitely will. I've always been a Jalen Reed fan, and I think he's going to predominantly be the slot guy. Jordan Love, he spreads the ball around really, really well. Zach, do you have anything you want to add to Matthew Golden going to Green Bay?
Yeah, Nate didn't even bring up Tucker Kraft, right?
Oh, yeah, Tucker Kraft there too.
And look, I think when you look at the Packers, and again, I'm always somebody that I'm expecting teams to fill in the blank, right? And the blank with the Packers has always been, why don't they use Jaden Reed a little bit more? To me, I don't know if you watch the Packers and feel the same thing, but it's this guy can produce for you. What I think this does is, as Nate mentioned, is maybe utilize Jaden Reed more closer to the line of scrimmage or more in the middle of the field, because they had Jaden Reed as the deep threat guy on that team. And now you have a guy who can do that a little bit better than him in Matthew Golden. So does this open up Jayden Reed more so in the middle of the field or even closer to the line of scrimmage? He's one of those guys. He's the gadgety guy. He's the reverse guy, or anything that's a trick play is a Jayden Reed play. I would hope that this would open things up for Jayden Reed a little bit more with the Christian Watson injury as well, to maybe keep him on the field a little bit more. I've been very excited about Jayden Reed in this offense. He scored 200 fantasy points the last 2 years with minimal volume.
Yeah.
So I don't think that volume changes. Does his opportunity change with Matthew Golden there as opposed to Christian Watson? I think maybe a little bit because of the styles of play that Matthew Golden brings that Jayden Reed doesn't. So, and just in terms of the Matthew Golden effect, this is a tough one, right? This is a tough one because we're talking about where do they line up in terms of their tiers with Emeka Ebuka and Matthew Golden. I can't, I think last year I was so gung-ho against Brock Bowers, and that just did not work out. I don't want to do that anymore. It's kind of like, how does this work for your team? And also managing your expectations, because a lot of times we are expecting things and they don't work out, and that really is a blow to your team. So if you're drafting Matthew Golden as a wide receiver 1, I think you're setting yourself up for a failed
disappointment.
Yeah, disappointment there. So just manage your expectations when you're drafting Matthew Golden would be my advice.
Now, the last relevant pick in the draft, fantasy-wise, Jackson Dart went 25 overall to the Giants. We talked about that pretty in-depth before. Not really a ton to add there. I do kind of like the landing spot. I think there's going to be an opportunity for him there. So I'll tell you what, before we head out, do you want to take about 10 minutes of questions and then we'll close this out?
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, also, while we're waiting for some other questions to roll in, I mean, I'm going to say I was pretty happy with the Ravens pick. Malachi Starks at 27, getting the number 1 safety, falling down the board. I'm ecstatic with that. Let's see. Which running back are the Bears taking, and are we worried still for Swift? There are a couple running backs still on the board, obviously.
I think it's Henderson.
I think it's Henderson myself.
Yeah.
But, I also understand when you already have DeAndre Swift, if Ben Johnson wants to create something similar to what he had with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously Swift is more of a Gibbs player than he is the David Montgomery player, which might lead yourself to go after a guy like Quinshon Judkins more than a guy like Travion Henderson.
Caleb Johnson
as well. It depends on where they actually want to go ahead and pick up a running back, because I don't think that someone should pick Quinshon Judkins or Caleb Johnson over Travion Henderson. So if they just want the best back and they're going to give him a ton of volume, Travion Henderson's the man to go. But if they want to create a committee back there, maybe wait, a couple more picks until they go pick up that running back, then I think Judkins or Caleb Johnson would be a great compliment to DeAndre Swift. Not that DeAndre Swift necessarily is a talent at this point where you're not selecting a guy like Travion Henderson actively, but I am still a little worried for Swift. This is better that it wasn't a first-round running back, that's for sure. It keeps him still in play to, have a top 36 running back season this year, but I definitely think that his ceiling is going to be very limited because I still expect the Bears to draft a running back sometime today.
Zach, this is a good question. I'm going to give this one to you. Any surprise running backs to get drafted today? I mean,
here we go. There's a list right there.
Yeah.
Well, I think the fact that only 2 were taken yesterday maybe hurts that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think what you need is you need like 2 or 3 teams to take running back early in round 2 for there to start being a run, because that's what happens, right? Everybody starts freaking out because the running backs are being taken. Now, the strength of this class, one of the positions is running back. So, maybe that doesn't happen so much as it has in previous years because there is pretty good depth. Like there's still Cam Scatterbo, Caleb Johnson, Jordan James is a good name. Dylan Sampson is a good name.
Yep.
Like, just going back to that last question, the Bears have 3 picks today, 2 in the second round. I think it's like 40 and 42. They very well could take like an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman and then take a running back in the 3rd. So I think that DeAndre Swift avoided the worst possible outcome in Ashton Genty. But we'll see how, that is affected today. I think you're going to get a surprise name, and the team you always look at is like the 49ers, right? They have a bunch of comp picks. If I'm looking here at the end of the draft, the 49ers have pick 100, which is at the end of the 3rd round. I mean, like, look at this. Like, I talked to you the other day. We're looking at the NFL.com rankings of the running backs. I talked to you the other day about Jacory Krosky-Merritt, and he's a top 10 running back on this list ahead of Jordan James and Cam Scatterbo.
And for the record, if you want to hear about players like Jacory Krosky-Merritt, I had talked about him ad nauseum on our Patreon Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. During the season, I do a small school big player of the week. He was on there.
Yeah.
Just to say,
Mike was talking about him.
Good draft
Before he was even at Arizona, when he was still playing in the FCS or something.
New Mexico.
New Mexico. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I'll tell you. There's a couple surprises for me. Running backs where if they went today, a guy like Jaden, not sure how to say it. He'd be a surprise if he went today. And a lot of people are high on Jordan James as well. If those two guys went today, that would be a surprise for me personally.
Yeah, I think we could see somebody go there for sure.
Yeah.
How does T. Law's value look after taking Hunter? I love it. Obviously, you got Brian Thomas there. You got Travis Hunter there. I know we all kind of like Parker Washington as wide receiver 3 there.
Liam Cohen, man.
Liam Cohen, great coach,
That's
great
the
offense.
most important part of any of those players.
Yeah, and maybe they don't have like the RB1 that they're going to be having, in 2027 on the team right now. But this year, I think ETN and Tank Bigsby is still a really good 1-2 punch for that backfield. We're going to have to see what happens with Brenton Strange, if he really can develop into a starting tight end for them. But there's a lot of good base level there that they can work with. And then you got some high upside guys with Brian Thomas Jr., with Travis Hunter. I think, I've always been a Trevor Lawrence fan. I think he's always been undervalued, even though he's kind of underproduced over the past couple of years. But this just continues to get me excited about Trevor Lawrence. I think, at some point, he's got to break out. He's that good of a quarterback. I think the Jags have just kind of struggled. I think Doug Peterson, just obviously didn't end up being the guy. But I do really like Liam Cohen. You keep going back to it. I think this is the year that we maybe get that Trevor Lawrence breakout that a lot of us have been waiting for him to be that top 12 quarterback. Could happen this year.
You got another one for us there, Mr. Producer. Do you think the Browns start day 2 with Henderson and Sanders with their 2 early picks?
No, I don't.
I don't think it would be the worst thing.
I don't think it'd be a bad idea.
But Zach, you have another thought on that. What are you thinking?
I think they showed us yesterday what they're trying to do, which is address the trenches, which is what Philadelphia showed us you should do, and really load up on draft capital, which I loved what they did. Obviously, you'd love to have a generational player like Travis Hunter. They are in salary cap hell. Right? Because they are just locked into that Deshaun Watson contract for this season and next. And so how do you improve your team? That is a pretty good team on paper. To get better, you get draft picks. You get cheap players for the next couple of years. So they added a 2nd-round pick today. They added a 1st-round pick next year. That's 2 extra players on that roster that are both probably top 40 players. They are top 40 players because one is a 2nd-round pick today. It's number 35. And one is a 1st-round pick next year. I love what the Browns did. I would expect them to continue to address the trenches, at least with one of those first 2 picks today, and then maybe Shador. I just don't think they go running back quarterback. I could be wrong, but they showed us yesterday that they are prioritizing the defensive line, and I would expect them to address the offensive line. They have I can't remember the guy's name, but I think their left tackle or right tackle is like on the verge of retirement. He came back for 1 more year. I can't remember his name. Somebody in the comments let me know. But they're old on the offensive line, so I would expect them to take a lineman today. And possibly a quarterback.
Yeah, I think the draft kind of fell very well for the Browns at this point where they got these 2 picks to start off the 2nd round. They got to be picking a quarterback here. And for the fact that Shador Sanders is still here for the Browns, they might big brain it, and they might think that, they can do better. Then maybe they go Tyler Shuck. But I think this draft has fallen really well for them to pick up Sanders, who I still think is a 1st-round talent. I think maybe some of the off the field attitude, but also just the fact that his last name is Sanders and the media hype that comes with that. I think that did turn some teams off. I still think that, talent-wise, I'd have him as a late 1st, but I think this is a great value if they pick up Sanders here. If they go somewhere else like Tyler Shuck, that's fine. I don't think that gives them as much upside as possibly Sanders, but I think the draft has fallen pretty well for them at this point.
Joel Bitonio was his name.
Yeah.
For 1 more year. He's 33 years old.
So ABC favorite says Raiders picked Jay Higgins at number 37.
I love it.
I would like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be a really good compliment to Jacoby Myers as well. They don't have that X-wide receiver to kind of replace Devontae Adams. Jaden Higgins could fill that role. Then you have Trey Tucker playing that flanker to be the deep down the field threat. I think that's a really good landing spot for Jaden Higgins and obviously really good draft capital. We love that top 40, top 50 wide receiver draft capital. That usually works out pretty well. So I love that idea. That would be a lot of fun to see. And I think, if Jaden Higgins was the number 37 pick, you got Geno Smith throwing to him. You got Pete Carroll there. You got Ashton Genty. You have a good offense starting to come around. Does Higgins make it into the back end of the 1st round or is he still an early 2nd?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. And look, as much as I think that pick makes sense on paper, the Raiders already addressed the skill position in the first round. They still need offensive line.
Yeah.
I'm just, again, the word of the day for me is like managing expectations, right?
Mhm.
I'm big on that in a lot in life, most specifically in fantasy. But if you're expecting every sexy landing spot to get a sexy fantasy football player, it doesn't always happen. So, you could see Jaden Higgins, whatever, first name, to the Raiders at 37, but they very much need offensive line. They want to protect Geno. They want to open up lanes for Ashton Genty. The best way to beat Patrick Mahomes is to keep him off the field. And so having a good ground game, they already addressed that in the first round. I could definitely see an offensive lineman. I know it doesn't sound fun, but it's just something you could see. And you saw a lot of linemen get drafted yesterday, and I think you could still see that happen today in the beginning of round 2.
All right, so we got one here. Then we'll go to the super chat that we got. Would you trade the 101 to get the 104 and 105? Maybe get Tet and Henderson, or if Travis Hunter, I'm assuming, falls, get Trav and Tet with 4 and 5. I don't know if Travis Hunter is going to fall that far. To be honest with you,
you got Brian Thomas there. You got the competition. I think he does fall to like the 105.
But what would you guys make this trade to get both of those picks?
I think I'd be okay with that. I think Ashton Genty is a really good pick, but also I think Henderson, Hampton, and we still have to see where Henderson lands. But I think you have 3 really good running backs in this draft class. So if you can pivot off of Genty and still get one of the other 2 guys and get Tet McMillan on top of that, I think that is a good trade. Zach?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the value is there. There's a lot of information we don't have there. Starting size, what your team looks like at 101, so on and so forth. But the value is there for that trade. 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so this is from Liam. Feel like it's going to be Milroe to Cleveland. Still burned from the Manziel experience. And also, Liam did say, Nate, that he is a Bengals fan. He's telling the Ravens to stop drafting so well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there you go. So
I know.
Yeah, I could see Milroe going to Cleveland. And he had been mocked there in the second round a couple times, I believe. So okay. Would you prefer to see Sanders there or Milroe?
I mean, I prefer Sanders there for sure. But also, I understand if someone wants to take the swing on Jalen Milroe, his upside is one of those franchise-changing quarterbacks. If Jalen Milroe can do the easy stuff, then we know he can already do the hard stuff, even at the next level. So if he can develop and do the easy stuff, then you do have someone that you can build a team around for sure. I think Sanders can also be that, a bit safer, but doesn't have quite the upside that Jalen Milroe has. Now the question is, do the Browns really have the offense or the situation to develop Jalen Milroe? Shedeur Sanders, I think he can walk in there day one, be the quarterback for them. Maybe they struggle a little bit because outside of Jerry Jeudy and, depending on how you feel about Cedric Tillman, they don't really have a great offense sitting there. But Jalen Milroe, they don't really have much to develop him or have him sit behind. What's he going to sit behind? Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco for how long until you start hearing, hey, Milroe, get him out there. And if I think Milroe goes out there too early, then you're just limiting yourself on what he can develop into. So while I see the upside in taking the swing on a guy like that, I don't think the Browns are in a great situation to take that swing. Now it's a second-round pick, so it's you're not using your first, so it's a little bit easier to make that investment and take that risk. But with Sanders sitting on the board, even a guy like Tyler Shuck, who I don't think has nearly as much upside as Sanders or Milroe, but gets you someone out there that can start for your team right away and, maybe continue to develop. And he spent 6 years in college, so I don't know how much more Tyler Shuck's going to develop. But I don't know if Milroe would be my pick if I was the Browns. I probably would go with Sanders.
The one thing that we're not talking about is like that fit for that place. That's you think about December football in Cleveland. It's cold. It's snowy. I can't answer this. You can. Is that a good fit? Like on paper, Shedeur playing in those types of conditions.
Played in Colorado. Played in Colorado for the last 2 years. Yeah, it's not like he was down in Jacksonville.
But we didn't see him in games in December playing in the snowstorm like we saw in Week 15 this year, where Jameis Winston was slinging it around the field. And he's going to have to go to Pittsburgh. He's going to have to go to Baltimore and play in those conditions as well. So I don't know. I'm not answering the question. I'm just saying that's something we have to think about too when we start slotting in quarterbacks, because I think Shedeur is a really good dome quarterback. And so to me, that's like New Orleans.
New Orleans be good.
It would, you would put Atlanta in there. They don't need one. You would put Detroit in there. They don't need one. But Shedeur in a dome would be perfect to me. So can you see Shedeur succeeding in late November, early December, January in those types of conditions, windy, cold, and snowy? I don't know. I'm not the person to answer that question.
Yeah. All right. Looks like that's about it for comments and questions. So we're going to head on out of here. We will be back tomorrow morning with another live stream. We'll be back Sunday as well. So until next time, everybody, for Zach and Nate, I'm Mike. Thank you for watching.